So, do you need college? No. Is college stupid? Yes. Should you probably go anyway? Yes. But it depends. I think we've all been on the same page about this. You know it, I know it, everybody knows it, your parents know it. Your parents actually wanted me to remind you that this is the case. So believe it or not, today's video is sponsored by your parents. So today I want to talk about this whole it depends part because I think it's very crucial. I dropped out of UC Berkeley a little over a year ago, and I very recently re-enrolled about 2 months ago. And the time that I spent in between these 2 points was probably the most mind-blowing social experiment that I've ever experienced in my life. So obviously everyone's really opinionated, emotional, and strong on their stance on college, but I thought it was going to be pretty chill. No. Every single person that I knew freaked out. About 10 to 20% of people just wanted to hit me up because they want a reason to bash on college because it's fun. Like, I get it, that's fine, that's cool. And then the other 80 to 90% of people started talking to me like they either wanted to fight me, like I'm terminally ill, or they're just trying to give good advice. It's just that most of the time, people's reasoning behind why you should go back to college and finish your degree is just not good. So today I want to break down the most popular reasons that people have given me for why I should go back to college. Everyone gives the same reasons and I kind of agree with all of them, but 3 of them are actually just not good. 2 of them are very valid, but they're debatable. And then 1 of them is actually objectively good across the board. It's not very popular, but this is the only reason why I will be returning to UC Berkeley in the fall. Let's get right to it. So the first reason that basically every single person gives me is it's harder to get a job without a degree.
What? I had no idea.
Way. Cool. You would think that I probably know this by now, but I'm so glad that you and every single other person has told me about this, okay? That's not what this is about. I think there are 0 reasonable people that drop out thinking that it makes them more hireable. This point's really irrelevant at this point. I don't know what else you want me to say about that. Could we please just sweep it under the rug, end this discussion, hit it with a finishing move, whatever. So the second thing that everybody says is college experience. And yeah, college is fun. But what about the college experience do people actually like? People like that you have free time, you can avoid responsibility, you can socialize, and you can explore without knowing what you're doing. So obviously that's going to be fun. It's basically a socially acceptable way to be an adult yet not take ownership of your life. So yeah, I can see why you'd think that college is the most fun thing ever. But have you even tried dropping out? Holy it is so much fun. So back in middle school, I got picked on a lot for being a nerd, for taking school very seriously, and it sucked. I couldn't imagine why anyone would want to treat people like this. I can't imagine being on the other side. And now, I totally get it. Like, you think that calling people nerds stops being fun after 6th grade? No, it is still fun. I will drop out again just to make fun of you, okay? But in all seriousness, people really like to say that college is the best time of your life. And maybe that's the reality, but I don't think that's a very good reason for going to college. I would like to make my decisions as if that doesn't need to be the case, because otherwise you're kind of just opting into having a pretty sad life, and we don't need to do that. So the third reason I get a lot for why I should go back to school is dropping out of school is risky. And that's probably true in a lot of ways, but it's so vague, so we need to actually evaluate risk objectively. You're probably not trying to avoid risk. We're not afraid of that. We're afraid of the consequences of certain types of risk that have potentially infinite downsides, the types of risks that completely wipe you out. And the way to protect yourself from this isn't by avoiding all risk, because doing that actually makes you more fragile to those because you don't create options for yourself. The way to protect yourself from these game-ending risks is by learning how to manage risk and accepting ones that have limited downsides. So for me, what's my downside for dropping out of school? Okay, this is pretty privileged, I know, but really not that much, right? It took me 11 minutes to reapply. I was re-enrolled within 24 hours of reapplying. Could have waited a few years before re-enrolling. I could stay re-enrolled just to qualify for full-time roles and then drop out to stack on internships and then re-enroll again later. Like, it's scary because of the type of decision that it is, but objectively, it's not that risky. But then everyone loves to throw out this hypothetical scenario, and it usually sounds like this. What about 10 years from now when there's an economic downturn and you're at risk of unemployment? You will need to bank on your degree. You're assuming that somehow there's a circumstance or event in the far future that is by nature random. You cannot predict it. There's nothing you can do to stop it. It's beyond your control. But somehow you can also assume that in random circumstances, your degree will actually matter. And I'm sure we could agree that the only actual solution to this is to not be vulnerable to this to begin with. I just don't agree with going to school with the intention, with the mindset of building your entire career and your financial stability on the perceived value of your degree just because of a fear of risk. Even though, okay, yeah, there's probably a lot of truth to it somewhere, it sounds good, can we just point to where that actually is? We need to be more specific about risk. So the fourth reason that a lot of people give me for why I should go back is you need a college education to be successful. And yeah, that's kind of true a lot of the time. It depends. If you're trying to be a doctor, a lawyer, a politician, advanced engineering, hard science, yeah, you kind of need a college degree. But in a lot of these cases, I would like to suggest that maybe you don't need to be a doctor. There's a high probability that a lot of people in this category either arbitrarily picked something because they were told they were supposed to in high school or their parents pressured them to. And if that's the case, then I don't know what else to tell you. Yeah, you kind of got to get the degree, but at the end of the day, the ball's in your court. So if you're not in this category, you're not married to a specific field, which I am not, then yeah, a degree is always going to help. But success ultimately comes down to two things. You create something that people need or see value in, or you get good enough at something such that people are willing to pay you for it. And in both of these cases, yeah, a formal education will probably get you there. But what is an education anyway? It comes down to three things: content, mentorship, and practice. We all know that these three things you can find elsewhere, not in college, and it's probably better for you if you learn how to create these things on your own. Content, that's kind of a non-issue. We can all access the same content. You can get course materials from a college if you really need to. Most of the students at top universities are still going to be struggling, so obviously it's not because of a lack of content. Mentorship, well, that kind of varies from school to school. Inherently, everyone at a college is going to have some conflict of interest with each other. At least at UC Berkeley, the whole student core staff dynamic doesn't really lend itself to mentorship. Professors aren't designing their classes to be personally engaging. Yeah, you probably will find life-changing mentors in college, but it's not really because of the actual education. It's more of the exposure to these types of people, and you could probably get that just by living in a college town and showing up to things. And then there's practice, which is probably the most important part of an education because that's what actually makes you good at stuff. But really, in college, you're paying for people to give you artificial stress and structure just because you aren't doing that on your own. It's pretty hard to argue that you can't get all three of these things on your own, but that's not really the question here. The question is, will you actually? And even so, is it worth it to you to prove that to yourself? For me, I think it is. I see so much value in building your own educational infrastructure, but it's not really practical because for most people, it isn't. And most people will thus assume that for most other people, it isn't. And if you choose to go this route, you will not only have to prove this to yourself, but you will have to prove yourself to every single person that you meet, like every 10 minutes. You might as well start a YouTube channel about it. So ultimately, there is truth to this point, but we need to reframe it from you probably need a college education to college is probably easier than all of your alternatives. And that's very reasonable. That makes sense. But this brings me to my main point. Why would I want to let "it's the easy way" be my reason for doing anything? And the fourth reason people give me is college is a good financial investment. And maybe this is kind of true for me because I only have 30 units left and I pay in-state tuition, but there's no type of thing that is inherently a good investment. You have to actually make a good one. So is college a good investment? Well, let's do a little thought experiment if you don't mind. This is hypothetical, it's not realistic, just as a way of thinking about it. Let's say college is costing you about $100,000 in total expenses. There's three cases. Either you have $100,000 to spend on college right off the bat, you're spending a total of $100,000 over a period of time, or you're using a student loan as leverage. Well, the best we can do here is compare it to other investments. So let's look at the first case. The easiest thing you can do with $100,000, you just drop it into a brokerage account, put it in a very conservative, diversified portfolio of index funds, mutual funds, ETFs, robo-advisors, whatever. You can probably expect an average return of about 7% on the conservative side every year, compounded annually. So over like a 40-year time frame, let's say you start at age 18, by age 65, you should have about like $2.2 million in your account. But you're probably not gonna drop $100,000 in one sitting, and you're gonna lose a lot of that to taxes. So let's look at the second case. You could also use a Roth IRA or any type of tax advantage retirement account. Again, this is just the easiest way to do it. You really don't need to do anything. If you put in the max contribution of $5,500 per year, and you do this starting at age 18, you will have invested the entire $100,000 by the time you hit, I think, 36 or 37. So by the time you hit age 65, which is the traditional traditional retirement age, you will be a tax-free millionaire. Then in the third case, if you're using a student loan, you're basically betting that the return that you get on college is outpacing the cost of having $100,000 now instead of later, which is basically the interest of the loan. So can you beat these returns on an annual risk-adjusted basis with the returns that you get from college? Yeah, you probably will, but surprisingly, a lot of people in America don't. But what even is the return that you get on college? Because a lot of college websites get this wrong. It's not the total income that you earn after graduating college, because you're not really comparing to zero. It's the difference between what you would have made after finishing college and what you would have made after spending 4 years doing literally anything else. So what is that? There's no way to know. There's no way to measure that and prove it. Yeah, we have a lot of weak correlations that we can go off, and they're probably good enough, but by nature, college is a speculative investment. It's one that I'm willing to put my money on. It probably works out for most people. It's probably a good idea. But from an objective investment standpoint, it's not really the most compelling reason you can throw at someone for going to college. And there is only one reason why I will be returning to UC Berkeley this fall, and it is the only objectively good reason, hands down across the board, for doing literally anything. And I'm going to tell you what that is right now, right here in this video, right now. Here it is. I felt like it. You probably don't like this reason. You probably have a bunch of other reasons, but I guarantee you, you will never find any reason that is better than this one. And I think it's a huge problem that as a culture, we feel like we need to. This need to justify ourselves, to explain ourselves. These things have never mattered ever to anyone in the history of the universe ever. I would like to argue that it is a deeply ingrained cultural habit that actually makes people less hireable, takes away from the college experience, makes people fragile to risks, damages people's ability to self-educate, and puts people in debt. Everyone is looking for a way to emotionally justify the sacrifices they've made to get to wherever they are, or they're trying to champion the infrastructures that they've grown dependent on. And this has been consistent in every single person's reaction to my dropping out of school. And that's the end of the story. That's all I have for you today. If you found this video helpful and you want to see more, make sure you hit the big red box down there that says subscribe on it, and then tap the notification bell so that YouTube lets you know whenever I post any new content. As always, thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you next time.